I think we would be better off if we never had the term mental illness, but maybe we had mental injury. Because
Yep.
just like we have mental health, you can be completely mentally injury free, or maybe you have a little mental injury, or maybe you have a severe mental injury. See, I was always convinced when I was growing up that men didn't talk about their struggles or the emotions.
PeopleBuild is bringing a light to the tradespeople in the industry who are often forgotten and consistently taken for granted. Construction industry matters. It's been fascinating now to be able to have the platform to meet the men and women who work in our construction industry. Their concerns matter. Welcome to the PeopleBuild Podcast. It is a great honor and a privilege to be joined by Dr. Vince Hafeli, who is arguably an expert a national leader in discussing mental health and transformational leadership. He has written a book, which is available on Kindle and Amazon, as well as spoken on several TED Talks in excess of 4 million views. And it's a great pleasure to talk about the mental health and the construction industry and its relationship to suicide and suicide prevention. Dr. Vince, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here. It's greatly appreciated.
So I'd like to read a little bit of a snip from your book, just to kind of set the stage for the conversation today. So you spoke in the book going, construction can be demanding. With employees relocating from job site to job site, these moves can create an environment of instability with employees' families and coworkers. The work hours can be long and fluctuate from days to nights and nights to days. This fluctuation can lead to sleep deprivation and injuries. The oscillation is also disruptive to an employee's home life. Construction ranks as the second highest industry group in deaths by suicide, and construction and extraction, meaning mines, quarry, oil and gas, and extraction, rank as the highest occupation group in deaths by suicide. I like your quote, if you are a numbers person, this should be an area of concern. What led you to do the research on this topic?
Well, when I went back in January of 21, I guess, to work on my doctorate degree. And when I went there, this was nowhere on the radar. And when I mean nowhere, I mean nowhere. I actually wanted to research like mid-level, lower-level leadership in my industry, my segment of the construction industry, asphalt. I wanted to research how we take the guy that can grade at running a paver, or the guy that can grade on a roller, and hey, we say, we just lost a boss. You're so great at running that piece of equipment, we're going to make you a boss. And we set them up for failure. I wanted to research that and find out what other industries were doing to maybe not see the failures we were. And about 6 months into the program, I told one of the professors that's what I wanted to research, and he kind of looked at me and chuckled and said, that's pretty weak and lame. Go find something else. And so I had to think a little bit. In 2007, I tried to take my life. Actually, about a quarter mile from where I'm sitting here behind our asphalt plant. And from 2007 until 2021, only 3 people ever knew of that night. My son, which was 17, 18 years old at the time, and my what became my ex-wife. So, I kind of thought about it, and I had published a paper a couple months earlier for a conference over in India. And a hook line in that piece I wrote was suicide in the industry. That was kind of the hook to get people want to read all the boring stuff in the back. And so I went and talked to Dr. Arnall, and I said, how about suicide in the construction industry? And he said, wow, that'd be powerful if you could do that and if you could do something with it. I didn't relate to him why I felt like I wanted to write on it. I mentioned that paper in India, but I still didn't tell him about that night. So, still 3 people only know about that night. And then in July, a month later, which would have been in 21, I told the people on my organization here what I was learning in the research about how high the numbers were in our industry. And I told them that on our safety day in January of the upcoming year, we were going to roll out a mental health program at Ajax and talk about it. And for whatever reason, that day I told the 16 people in that room about that night in 2007. So that was the first time that I had ever talked about it with anyone. I mean, actually, my wife and son and my son and I never talked about it until February of 23, I guess. And what became my ex-wife and I don't know that we really ever talked about it again after that night. So when I say nobody talked about it or knew about it, I mean, it was just, hey, I'm not going to talk about it because I'm a man and men don't talk about them type of thing, right?
Yep.
So that's how I landed on the topic of researching it. I mean, it was personal, and we'd lost more than one person here at work to suicide. So I had, professional tie to it, a personal tie to it. And when I saw what the numbers were, it was like, I got to do something.
How easy, when you were doing your research, like how easy was it to find the information as it relates specifically to the construction industry?
Well, they began recording the data in the U.S. in 2016. So I'm starting the research there in the latter part of 21. So the data is limited.
Mm-hmm.
I found it through the CDC, found it through other organizations that I documented their research, the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention, Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas out in Colorado had done a lot of research in the area. So, I mean, there's data there. There's not a lot of, I guess you could call, deep data. So, then a lot of books, a lot of trade journals, a lot of articles to find out what are some of the commonalities of why people in this industry go down that path. So, I mean, the data is out there. Google it and it'll pop up.
So you started your research in 2001, and then you kind of made your first, it sounds like you made your kind of first foray into like making some changes within Ajax in 2022. What was the goal when you unrolled the kind of that first mental health awareness within Ajax? And I guess we should start with how many people work at Ajax, and kind of what's kind of the business structure like, so people can kind of understand kind of like the remote work or local work and kind of where people are.
We're a Florida-based asphalt paving contractor with 8 asphalt plants, so we don't travel across the nation. We're kind of locked in our area. So people being away from home stuff, we don't have to deal with that issue in our company for the most part. At the time when we rolled this out, we were about 450 employees. Today we're about 600. In 2002, we were 78. So we've seen a lot of growth in the last 20 years. And with growth comes a lot of different types of pain, which this mental piece was part of that pain. What was the goal when we rolled it out? I've got a talk I go and give, and I've given it at 94 locations. And I tell everyone that their goal should begin where our goal began. One, it doesn't cost anything to start this, to put it into your company, because the first thing you have to do is just have conversations, and conversations don't cost you anything. In my research, I did qualitative interviews of industry leaders from across the U.S., and there was only one thing that 100% of the people I interviewed agreed upon. If you're going to begin a mental health initiative in your construction organization, it has to begin with the leaders of the company. The leaders have to say, we're going to do something, and we're going to address this, and they have to stand behind it. And that doesn't mean they do a one-time statement. That actually means they have to stand behind it. That doesn't mean they necessarily carry the torch every day. Generally, HR or safety or a combination of the two work together in the programs as they progress. But the leader of the organization got to be out boots on the ground talking to guys, hey, how you doing today? And and having conversations about mental health. And you can have them conversations without necessarily having to use the words mental health, if that makes you more comfortable. So on January 3rd of 22, I got on a stage in front of, we probably had a little over 400 people there at our safety day, and told them we were going to begin this initiative at Ajax. I relayed some of the numbers to them. Didn't tell them about my night in 07. I made a statement that, hey guys, I've been there before. Because at that point, I was probably still somewhat uncomfortable standing up in front of people, telling that, even though all the leaders in the room knew it because I had told them on July 16th, prior to the January 3rd meeting. But I did tell everyone in the room why we were doing it. We were a family. We're a family-owned business. We're a family organization. I told them, we've always had a great culture here, and we think we still have a great culture. But that doesn't mean that our culture can't be better. And so I think we'll make it better by allowing you to talk about a mental struggle you may be going through. And if you do that, we're not going to allow any bullying. There's not going to be any demotions, not going to be any terminations. We're not going to tell you, hey, thank you for telling us you're struggling. Now go home and figure it out when you do come back. I know maybe we'll have a job for you when you come back. We told them there was going to be none of that. We were going to support you. We've had people that have been off well over a month, and while they've been out, we've paid their salary and taken care of them. We've helped get people back into treatment, people that were bipolar and went off of their meds. We've helped them get back in and get both their work and family life stable. So we just began by talking about it. We didn't go purchase any new tools to put into our employee system program. We already had tools in there, but we weren't using them because nobody ever talks about them tools, because it's about mental health, right? And we don't talk about mental health. So we decided as the leaders in the organization, or I guess probably I'm the one that decided that we're going to learn what we have already in our toolbox for mental health. And we're going to find out if it works or doesn't work, which means we're going to call some of the numbers that are in those programs and find out what happens when you call someone in your EAP program. Do you get a live person? Do you get a recording? Do you get an answering system? Do they call you back in an hour, or do they call you back in 3 days? So we wanted to find out if it worked. And I encourage companies to do that. And I tell them, you may have a great program, or you may find out, hey, when it's time to renew your insurance benefits, maybe you need to look at enhancing what you have in there. Maybe you look at a different company, whatever that is. But after probably 21 months or so, we finally added another tool to our kit, to our overall health package for the employees. But at that point, we had been utilizing all the other tools we had and thought we could do better with this other tool. That's the only reason we even added it. So leaders of organizations need to know that to get this going, it doesn't cost you any money. It costs you a little bit of your time. It costs you a little bit of you being uncomfortable to talk about this. And I'll get long-winded here for a second. I think people are uncomfortable with this because whenever I did my research and when I would interview these people, that I had a standard list of questions that I would go through. And one of the questions I would ask is, if I say the words mental health, what comes to mind? And what most of them initially would say is nothing. It's an uncomfortable, you're going to make me talk about that. That's uncomfortable. But eventually, it has bipolar, it's schizophrenia, depression, it's anxiety. And I'd say, okay, and we go on to the next question. And then I'd end the interview and I'd turn my tape recorder off and I would tell them, hey, you graciously gave me your time. There's a couple of things I'd like to educate you on. I asked you a question that you never answered. And the question was, if I say the words mental health, what comes to mind? And you never answered it. Well, yeah, I did. Well, no, you didn't. Well, yeah, I told you what it is. It's mental, depression, anxiety. And I would tell them, I didn't ask you to tell me what mental illness is. And everything you described as mental illness. Mental illness is a piece of mental health, right? Just like physical injury is a piece of physical health. We have physical health, and you may be a completely physically healthy individual, or maybe you got a sprained ankle, so you're somewhat physically injured. And I think we would be better off if we never had the term mental illness, but maybe we had mental injury, because just like we have mental health, you can be completely mentally injury free, or maybe you have a little mental injury, or maybe you have a severe mental injury. See, I was always convinced when I was growing up that men didn't talk about their struggles or the emotions because they take you to Anna Jonesboro and lock you up. Anna Jonesboro's a small town in southern Illinois where I grew up, and that's where the state mental hospital's at. And I was convinced that if you told anybody as a man that you were struggling, that's where they would take you. That's what my dad told me. So I try to educate people that an example I give them is I used to do a lot of Ironman racing. And when I was doing that racing, I was physically fit. But as I got older, I injured my shoulder training for a race. And I was convinced at the time I was 55-ish, and hey, I'm probably at that age and need rotator cuff surgery. So I went straight to the surgeon. I didn't go to my family doctor because I was convinced my shoulder was injured. So, I was racing, and let's say my shoulder was like a 0, and now I think I need surgery. And so it's like a 10, it's on the other end of the spectrum. And the surgeon told me, you don't need surgery, you need some physical therapy. I'm going to send you to a physical therapy guy, and he can get this fixed. And he did. So my shoulder wasn't a 10 like I thought. It was like a 4 or 5. It just needed a little bit of therapy, right? And so mental injury or mental illness are kind of the same. Sometimes everything's great and you're like a 0. And sometimes there are people that are like a 10 that my dad told me about that maybe do need to be somewhere to where they don't injure themselves or others. But then other times people are somewhere between a 0 and a 10. And maybe you just need a friend to talk to. Maybe you need a family member to talk to. Or maybe you need to go see a therapist to talk to. But nobody wants to say they're going to see a therapist because you get that, oh, wow, I didn't know that about you. I tell people, when I told my wife and people at work I didn't have to have surgery on my shoulder, physical therapy was going to fix it. Everybody thought that was phenomenal. And when I told them that Dr. Wolgamuth, Jenny, she was one of the professors on my dissertation committee, she said, I know somebody that's done this research in a different field and it's going to weigh heavy on you, Vince. I'm going to ask you to go see a therapist while you do this, if you will. Well, I'd never seen a therapist, and I didn't want to go see a therapist because men don't do that. But to humor her, I did. And when I told people, some of those same people that I told I was going to see a physical therapist, I told them I was going to go see a counselor while I was doing this research. All I got was gasp and ahs. God, we didn't know that about you. We didn't know you were struggling. And I said, wait a minute. I told you I was going to go see a physical therapist for my shoulder, and you thought that was great. I tell you I'm going to go see a therapist to help me with the most important organ in my body, my brain. And suddenly you think that's wrong? So that's what we got to change in the conversation about mental health. We want people to be mentally healthy. And even people that go through mental illness, I would have told you I never had any mental illness in my entire life. But I went through a lot of deep, dark stuff with family, and I talk about that if you want me to. And yeah, I mean, going to see a therapist changed me. I mean, I found out, she said, you have ADD, you're controlling, you suffer depression, and you suffer from anxiety. And I always thought that if you had any of those, that's who you were. It's not what you had, it's who you were. And she said, hey, I'm not telling you that you have any of those severely. I'm just telling you, you've got a little depression in you, and you got some anxiety, and you've got these other two. And what I learned, I then had to go and research what depression to find out. God, am I? And clinical depression, the simple term just means that for more than 14 days, something changed in your routine and habits. You sleep more, you sleep less, you eat more, you eat less. And over a period of years, I lost my brother, father, twin sons, and my mother. And I went through some depression. I would have never told you I was going through depression. I would have told you I was sad, lonely, lost. But hey, I went through the depression. So, hey, I said before you as a guy that's been diagnosed with a mental illness. Do I have it today? No. Did I have it back when that was all happening? I did. Now that I look back and see the signs and what I did. And have I had it between that time and the early 2000s and up until today? Yeah, I've had it more than once. Um, I'd like to tell you every day of my life has been perfect, but it hasn't. So
Is
just
that
because you have it once doesn't mean you have it every day.
when I like the distinction, right? In kind of almost separating the difference between like illness versus injury. And it sounds like the way you describe it, it is not present most of the time, or sometimes it is, and it becomes present versus like when something happens. Like I appreciate the openness and honesty in your TED Talk speaking about your loss, like your losses that you sustained in I think it was 2007 you mentioned, and and then the emotional toll, and then trying to conceal it, and then bringing that back now too to your staff at Ajax that you've experienced, and seeing that there's other people who also struggle at times
Mm-hmm.
without really being able to tell if you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
It's now I have a question. Like, so you mentioned that when you started the program, it's at no cost to the employer. I think where a lot of people in that employer realm, I think they do fear the cost implications of the unknown. And one area that I like, is it common for Ajax to pay when somebody's off work, like in general, or is this something kind of specific to the mental health side that you enrolled specially?
We do as much as we can to help all of our employees. If an employee is physically injured,
Yeah.
we bring them back in whatever capacity we can that the doctor will allow them to keep them working.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hey, I've paid guys to be at home while they had knee replacements and hip replacements because we got an aging workforce, right? Um, so if you can do that for the physical piece, why can't you do that for the mental piece?
It, what I like I like the direction that you go with that, because what I hear is that it's not a cost to the company per se, that you view it more as an investment, right? And they kind of like I differentiate, like on a on a profit and loss sheet, there's definitely a difference between a cost and an investment. And it sounds like you're treating that when you have an employee who's physically injured, you're paying them for their time off, like while they heal, on the what I assume is the belief that they're more likely to come back to you, because and then you're retaining that worker, which is reducing your retraining costs, your acquisition costs. Do you see it the same way?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had people come in and it costs you anywhere from $2,500 to $27,000 to hire a new employee, depending on what you factor into that, right? And depending on the training, it might cost you more than 27,000. So for me to take an employee that's been here, we don't do it for the guy that's been here 3 months, right? But if you've been here 2-3 years, and we've got a lot of people that have been here more than 30 years, we're going to take care of you, because if I've got a good guy and I don't take care of him and I lose him, I got to replace him. Then I got to train a guy. And I may have to do that 2 or 3 times to get the guy that I had or the lady that I had. Our best recruitment tool that we have in our company, most of the people we hire because they know somebody at the company. So the more I take care of my people, the more they become my marketing tool to get new people in here for me to hire, which is more that I have to pay to all these online apps that want me to advertise to hire people. So I can save well over $100,000 a year in advertisement looking for employees if I take care of my employees and use them as my recruiting tool. We're just a family business. I wish I could tell you we're perfect in every way. We're not. So I'm not trying to say we are. We have our hurdles and struggles and hills we're still trying to climb. But we very much believe in taking care of our employees, because any contractor can go buy new yellow iron. Any contractor can go buy an asphalt plant, assuming you have funding and finances. But to get good people that you can trust on, that have your back, they're not going to have your back if you don't have their back.
I really hope that lands with the people who watch this episode. When you speak about the amount of money that as businesses we are willing to give to Google and Indeed, right? And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to supporting our own staff through their time of need, generally these costs tend to land in the thousands of dollars, and how very quickly we are to shirk those costs off and say, no, we're not paying that, and not looking at our existing labor as that source of referrals, the retention, the mitigating training costs. And I think that's one area that I hope that as an industry we can do more of, is speaking about shifting the narrative from a cost to an investment, and then talking about where the return is. And I think there's too much of a stigma on, and this is heavily my opinion, in the leadership community, where we say, well, there's no cost too high, we should spend anything, it doesn't matter, and not talking about the return on the investment. If you give someone a paid time off, if you pay them while they're in a treatment facility and they came back, well, what is the actual cost to the business? And then how do you realize that back, recognizing a competitive business industry? I imagine the asphalt industry in Florida is very competitive. Yeah. Would I be correct in saying that?
Hey, you're 100% correct.
Right? And yeah. So every dollar that you invest, be it in training or recruitment or supporting your staff, arguably needs to support your bottom line.
It's a people industry.
Yeah. So
you got to have the people.
Yeah. What did you add? So you said after 21 months, you added a tool to your employee supports. What did you guys add?
Well, it's a company and a program. You want me to mention the company?
Yeah.
Okay. U-Turn Health. U-Turn Health is a program that was started by Rich Jones and Hamilton Baden. Rich is a recovering opiate addict. He was injured and the doctor put in an opioid. So he's, I think, 21, 22 years now or recovered. And he's also a 20-year clinician in the mental health field. And his partner, Hamilton, was avid alcoholic, as he puts it. And he's been recovered, 10, 15 years. He came from the business world, worked for a top 500 Fortune company. And they have a program. There's a lot of online videos that guys can look at, but they also have peer-to-peer people for our employees. So if we got a guy here that's struggling with alcohol because he's going through a divorce, we reach out to U-Turn, or he reaches out to U-Turn. We connect them. And U-Turn says, hey, we got that guy out in Portland, Oregon that was struggling with alcohol and works in construction that was going through a divorce. We're going to put you two together. And it allows us, I mean, there's a guy that I talked to. It allows us as employees to have someone to speak with in a similar industry that's going through a similar life event as I am, so that you're not sitting with someone that's telling you, hey, it's going to be okay. It'll get better. Don't worry about it. You sit with a guy that says, hey, you know what? You think it sucks today? Just wait. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Let me tell you what happened to me. So it's just someone that they can have a conversation with and trust. It's all anonymous. We don't know that they're doing it or who they're talking to. People that know that I am and who I'm talking to, because I don't hide it. I mean, I tell people. And the employees have been very receptive to it. The cost was not astronomical, depending on, I guess, what you consider astronomical. And I don't want to say the number because it may be different for different people. So I don't want to quote something wrong for them. But it's YOUTURN health.com, I believe it is. It's U-Turn, one word, U-Turn, and then health. There are other programs out there, and we looked at the other programs, and I really felt comfortable with this. One, I've done several presentations with Rich and Hamilton at different conferences where we've done presentations together. And I believe in what they're saying and what they've done. And Hamilton's very blunt about, one thing he talks about that really resonated with me and I liked. He tells a story. He said, I think he was 17 or 18 years old. Dad bought him a brand new red Jeep, and his dad was a 4-star general, I guess it were. General, I think it was 4-star. Wow. Maybe it was 4-star colonel. 4-star something. Anyway, so a very regimented family, and he said, I drove my Jeep off of a bridge one night and submerged it. And when I came up out of the water, there was a lady standing there saying, is anyone else in the vehicle? And he said, all I could do was look at her and say, I don't know, because he said I was so drunk. And he said, I had to live with that for 24 hours until they got the Jeep out to find out there was nobody in it. And he said, that was rock bottom. He said, you've always heard the saying, you got to hit rock bottom before you can get better. I continued to drink 20 years after that. Hitting rock bottom doesn't fix your problems. You have to have a reason. And he said, my wife rolled over one morning and looked at me and said, Hamilton, I love you, but I can't do this anymore and I'm leaving you. I never took another drink after that day. He said, I'm one of the fortunate people that was able to just stop because of what I was going to lose. And he also believed that a recovering alcoholic, if you drink 20 drinks a day and if you can get down to drinking 3 drinks a day, he's okay with that because 3 is better than 20. So he just believes, and him and Rich both believe in support from family and friends. Rich is a clinician, but he will tell you that therapists aren't going to fix this problem. It's going to take organizations and companies allowing conversation to happen. That's how it will get fixed. So their platform allows our people to have honest and open conversations with someone going through something similar to they are.
That sounds so refreshing, because I do think from an organizational perspective, so often we want to just go, hey, for a prospective employee goes, hey, you got a problem? Hey, go see a therapist, right? And I think it is more difficult to do that in that lens of it is, from my perspective, difficult to separate work and life. That person who's struggling with either going through a divorce, struggling with alcohol or drugs or depressed for an unknown reason, that having a supportive work environment, like having his peers or his supervisor or leadership know and understand what's going on and then try to work with them through their struggles actively, to me feels like a more supportive working environment that probably leads to better success. But then also hearing how the U-Turn puts them with someone going through something similar? Because I know from my own life, it's been a struggle working with some employees who are going through either like heavy drug addiction or alcohol abuse. And empathy only goes so far. And I think that's sometimes and then I've definitely experienced too that resistance, and maybe you can speak to, is like the resistance from the employee level of even admitting that there is a problem and wanting to go get help. And I can see, like, do you use U-turn, or like, who recommends U-turn actually? To like, how does that conversation get brought up within Ajax?
Well, I recommended it because I ran into them at a conference somewhere, I think it was, or it may have been the first time we presented together. And I said, tell me about your program. And so I'm the one that walked into HR and then to the CFO and said, hey, put this in the budget next year because we're going to do it.
Cool.
And but prior to making that statement, I did have our HR. I said, hey, I want you to reach out and talk to them, and I want you to give me your opinion, because she has to believe in it, because she's the one that got to support it and get our employees the knowledge of how to use it right.
Yep.
And so Sandy listened to it and she said, hey, this is great. There was another program that we were right on the verge of doing. It was going to cost twice as much, and it was going to have all kinds of data, but too much data.
Interesting.
I just wanted our people to be able to talk, to be able to, we did that day on January 3rd on the stage in front of all the employees, and we made it. I said, this year, all we're going to do is we're going to do 4 toolbox talks. For the entire year, that's our goal. We're going to do a toolbox talk every quarter, so just be prepared for us. And it took off quicker than what I thought, but we did do a toolbox talk. And we took one in September. September is suicide awareness in America for the month of September. And there's a week in there where it's construction. And we went and met with 3 crews. And one crew that day wanted to tell us about an alcohol intervention they had done for one of their coworkers. The next crew a guy wanted to tell us about his father that had taken his life by suicide 10 years earlier. The third crew we went to, a worker wanted to show us the wrist where he had tried to slice his wrist. And then I learned that a lady down the hallway from me who had lost a couple family members to suicide, and one stopped her own mother. I never knew that. I soon learned that the guy one door down lost 2 uncles, lost several military friends. He's a retired Navy pilot. I soon learned that the guy that sits one door to the right also lost his father to suicide. And I tell people all those stories were always there. They didn't just suddenly pop up, but nobody felt like could they talk about them? Should they talk about them? How would people perceive me? And the lady that first told me about her family and her uncles and her mother, and she said, I've been ashamed of my family my entire life because of what they had done. But suddenly, after I listened to you talk at the Women of Asphalt, I did an online webinar with the Women of Asphalt. She said, suddenly I realized my family, I don't have to be ashamed of them like I thought. Because if someone that can have the career that you have had, has done the education experience that you have done, has the family that you have, yet you tried to take your life right here behind our office, she said, I suddenly realized that even good people can make bad decisions, or good people can go down a dark path that they had no intention to go down. So, hey, all those stories were here. Suddenly people just felt, hey, I'm in an environment where I'm not going to get chastised if I talk about my story. And talking about your story relieves the stress. I told those 16 people at work here on July 16th, 21. And at the time I had been married to my second wife, Stacy. At the time would have been 12 years, I guess, 12, 13 years. And in October, I was sitting in the backyard with tears in my eyes, and she said, hey, what's going on? And I said, I'm going to tell you about a night in 2007 that I probably should have told you before I told 16 people at work. but I didn't have any intention to tell them that day. I didn't have any plan to. And I told her, and when I finished, she said, how are you today? And I said, I feel like I can finally breathe.
Really?
I feel like just this weight has been lifted off of me. I've also learned that all the people that I thought would laugh at me or talk about me at work, none of them did. Or at least I don't know that they did. Maybe some of them did. I said, I just feel relieved that I can talk about it.
So when you, that's so like, so September 4th, or in September when you have suicide awareness and you're having these meetings, and all of a sudden all these stories start coming out. All the stories that were there in the past, but no one talked about it. All of a sudden, all of this information comes out within the group. What was the change in the organization? And then was there anything that you or your leadership team then had to do after that, or was just having the conversation enough?
Well, if you remember a couple of minutes ago, I said, hey, things took off quicker than what we thought. Yeah. We were going to do 4 toolbox talks. I got with 2 of the ladies in our office, our credit manager and our safety director, and I said, hey, I'd like to maybe start a team. I said, because if this mental health initiative is carried by me, I'm near the end of my career, and when I leave, I don't want it to go with me. I want something to remain here. So I said, I'm thinking about starting a team. We'll get a few people on there, and it'll just kind of, I don't want to call it the mental health team because nobody's going to want to be on a mental health team. So I said, hey, I was thinking about the Ajax Warriors, but hey, you all come up with a name, and the Ajax Warriors stuck. So the 3 of us started the Warriors. And then that's when we learned that individual one door down from me, that's when we learned his father had taken his life. He came in and said, hey, I'd like to be part of the Warriors. And he told us about his father. And then somebody else came forward and said, hey, I got a kid struggling at home. I don't know if I want to do anything here at work, but can I be part of the Warriors so I can learn what to do at home? And so, it was 3, and then it was 4, and then it became 5. And this year it'll be about 60. So about 60 of the people, 60. Okay. So about 60 people in the company will be Ajax Warriors. And to be a warrior, you don't get any extra pay. You don't get any extra benefits. You get the benefit of being on the team and knowing that you're helping support your coworkers. You know that you're learning tools that you can take home to use with your family. The initial group, we all went through and got trained as mental first aid responders, and then we all went and got trained through the Vital Cog program of Colorado University or the University of Colorado. And so the team, hey, I'm on the team, so the president's on the team. We've got MOT foreman, maintenance of traffic guys that are on the team. We've got office people. There's warriors spread out through the company. So those warriors are available for someone that, hey, I'm struggling. What have we got? What have we got in the toolbox that can help us? Or we've had people come up to warriors and say, hey, so-and-so, he hasn't seemed right lately, and he's missed the last 2 days of work. We need to call the sheriff department and do a wellness check. We need to go to their house because I went by and I couldn't get them to answer the door. We need to check on them. We would have never had that before. It would have just been, hey, the guy's been gone for 2 days. Sorry, SOB must have went to work somewhere else. But people suddenly now knew that, hey, something could be going on. Maybe there's more there than that. So the Warriors have really been instrumental in helping us keep this going. In fact, now we took the Warriors and we've actually set up a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary, because the gentleman that said, hey, I lost my father, he was running the program, and I could see after 2.5 years between doing that and doing his day job, all these people coming to him, it was mentally taxing, it was physical taxing. And I said, we got to have a rolling committee so that when you're done, it can live on. So now we've actually set up a little board on there to where they'll rotate on and off every 2 years. So I'm fully confident that the program will continue to go when I leave here. And I wouldn't have told you that when we began it. So I think it's important to have a team in your company, and they came up with their mission statement, their vision statement, what they stand for. And they do a lot of good things, and I'm proud of them.
That sounds like, I don't think I've ever heard of that. Out of all the, like, had you heard of that before? Is that a borrowed idea from somewhere?
I don't know that I've heard of other companies do that. I did going through my research would learn that, hey, there's like the safety department and a couple of people, they might get together a couple times a year and talk about things. And then they disseminate, they go to the field with it. But I just thought, God, if we could have boots on the ground and people sprinkled throughout the company, not everybody's going to want to come to my office and talk to me. Mm-hmm. But if they're out on a paving crew and they know the MOT foreman, they'll go talk to him maybe. And it has worked. I mean, it has been highly successful. We've had guys go up to a paving foreman and say, I think so-and-so, they've been off a little bit. And, they hook him up with one of the Warriors and they've come out and said, I'm thinking about taking my life. And that would have never happened before.
Oh, that sounds so like liberating, like from an organization. When you talk about the relief that you had felt when you were able to talk about like your history with the mental injury, right? And then being able to share that with your coworkers and then your spouse, and then to be able to extend that same opportunity then to your staff throughout the company at a peer level. That sounds like a great dream.
I think it's also important for people to hear, and probably business leaders. I'm not saying we got to hand out cotton candy and gumballs and ice cream cones every day when people come to work, right? It's still a tough industry. It's a demanding industry. It's low bid, tight profit margin, high risk. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this industry is wonderful. There's a lot of reasons why this industry is tough. I still tell people, hey, you still got to discipline people. You still got to write them up. There may be people that you still have to terminate because they're not a right fit for your organization. They may not be a right fit for the industry. You still have to run an efficient organization. You still got to get projects built. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it by having some empathy for people. The days of being able to lead with a stick and a bat and with verbal abuse is gone. That was my generation. The young people coming into the workforce, and you got to remember, I'm in my 60s, so young people are mid-30s back. They grew up having these conversations. These are comfortable conversations with them. Mm-hmm. And I tell business leaders, if we don't change our industry to where they can come in and feel like they can have these conversations and be heard, and we'll support them. Here in the U.S., it's a pretty tight labor market. They can go find another industry to work for. They can go find a different job. So if we want them to be part of our industry's got to evolve with the times. And, we addressed physical safety beginning probably 40 years ago. When I began in the industry, I used to go to work with shorts on every day and a pair of work boots and a t-shirt, no helmet, no safety vest. And got today, I wouldn't think about going out to a job site without work boots and without my leggings on for nighttime work and my safety vest and my hard hat and hearing protection and eyeglasses when they're necessary. So we've really improved our physical safety. So now I think they say that the next generation is blending physical safety and mental safety together. If if I got a guy that's coming to work today and he gets a terrible phone call about something going on, it could be a financial crisis, it could be a family crisis, and I ask him to go stand out on the highway with a stop and go paddle, stop go sign, and say, hey, your job today is to protect those 15 guys behind you and to not let any of the thousands of cars driving through here today have an accident. If his mind's not there and he's thinking about that call he got on the way to work, maybe I ought to thank him for saying, I shouldn't be there today. Put somebody else there today. Or maybe he just needs an hour, or maybe he needs a day, whatever it is, to get his mind back into the thought of what he's doing. We compliment employees for telling us, hey, thank you for telling us that. Thank you for taking us out of harm's way because we don't need another insurance claim. So if we want to get physically any safer in this industry than what we already have, the way to get there is by addressing our mental safety.
Well, and you had mentioned in I think it was one of your TED Talks, but about how, and I don't know where the stats came from, whether it's the U.S. or Florida based, but you mentioned that the 951 like fatalities due to injury on a job site. That in our industry is very like injury focused on the physical side. However, there was 4,800 fatalities due to suicide, and then you also tied it back to how many of those physical injuries would also tie back to a mental health, and that our focus as an industry or as a society, I interpret that as is misplaced.
Yeah, in the U.S., these are the U.S. numbers, but you can go worldwide, and they're similar. 951 we lost to workplace injury, electrocution, fall off a building, hit by a car in a work zone, trench collapse in a dirt operation. Yet we lost more than 4,800 that year to suicide. And as bad as that is, we lost 3 times as many more to opiate addiction. So, yeah, I talk a lot. And when I talk at these events, I tell people we always go to all of our conventions and conferences and talk about how we got to improve the 951 number. We got to drop that. It's killing our insurance rates, killing our workers. But we don't talk about the 4,800. And you said it, I'm convinced that a piece of those 951 were going through something mental that day. I didn't say they were going through mental illness. I didn't say they were crazy or any of that. They were going through something mental that day. And so, yeah, is it 10% of that 951 or is it 20%? It's a percentage. I'm confident in that. I mean, there's no research to show that I'm aware of. But I'm confident that we could save some of those workers by just addressing the mental health piece of it.
One thing I think would be valuable, I really like the example where you had somebody come to the company, identify they had a bad phone call, right? He's about to go out on the highway, turning a stop and go sign. How did that play out for the employee, or how would, in your dream, how would you want that to play out at Ajax? Like, so would that person be like asked? So I think you mentioned like ask how much time he needs. Would you pay that? Would you just take the financial burden off of the staff member, assuming he's been there more than 2 years? We're going to pay you for your time. Take some time. Like, how's the process like for people who run businesses? Like, how do they mirror what Ajax is doing?
Well, the first question would be, hey, thank you for telling me. And that's not a question, that's a statement. So where are we at here? I mean, you think you need an hour? You need 2 hours? We'll put you in a different spot out here today with the crew. And when you're ready to come back here to your normal job, you can do that. Do you need the day away? Do you need a week? What's this look like? And, we'll find that most people say that, hey, I need an hour or two to get my head back together. I'll be okay. And so we'll put them in a different spot. And give them their hour or two and then ask them again, hey, you sure? You can go home. Hey, what people make in construction and what we bill annually, sending the guy home a day and paying him is kind of minuscule, right? But we don't want 50 people showing up every day playing the card and doing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't, because people, I think, are so thankful for how we treat them that it doesn't get abused.
Because I think that's the fear, right? And for most business owners that I hear is that if we open up the conversation to psychological safety, then now this means that every day your employees will all show up, no one's going to work, and we're going to have to pay people. And so it's that fear of like, well, I don't want to have the conversation and I think part of it's financial and part of it's going to be like that fear of incompetence that they just don't know how to handle it.
Well, it goes back to your company and your culture and who you are and how you've treated people. I am fortunate to have worked for a very great owner and boss for 23 years that has always emphasized taking care of employees. If we had never taken care of our employees and had done this, maybe it would have looked different. This was just taking it to a next level, taking it to a higher level than where we were. I hear some owners say, it doesn't really belong here at work. Hey, when a guy shows up and he's limping, I can ask him, hey, is your leg hurt? The doctor can explicitly tell me, hey, light duty, because he said, how do we get in their head? How do we get in there? And how do we know? I don't know how to answer that question. You're not going to get in his head. But if you and his supervisor, if you've had a relationship with that guy for whether it's a month or 2 months or 30 years, you're going to know that something's different, something's going on with him. And hey, if you've got a guy that's faking that, he probably faked a lot of other things while he's been there. And he's probably not been there 20 years because he probably just didn't fit in. And hey, in construction, it's all about teamwork. And the team gets rid of the weak and the ones that don't play into the culture and the work ethic and all the things that we stand for. And you know what? Hey, if there are a few people that scam the system, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because if I saved or we helped one guy make his life better, if we take care of people's mental health, maybe we won't ever have to talk about the suicide piece.
Because right? I think that's the other part too, is like when we speak about mental health, like the suicide, that would be the last component of someone's struggle with mental injury or mental illness.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many leading indicators in advance of that. And I appreciate when you let me know like that the opioid deaths, we mentioned 3 times, so we'll call that 15,000. And then how much mental health, mental illness, and mental injury plays into kind of all of those. And really with the fear within our industry of even addressing it at all. Right. And how much time loss do we have to addiction? How much like how the employees struggle, and like there's all these costs that are impacting our industry in general. And I also believe too that mental health is like people struggle with the concept of mental health, and talking about mental health and illness and building that within a culture is at the root cause of all of these hidden costs. And there is definitely a fear that I see too, that people don't even want to start having the conversation at the company level because for whatever reason. And I'm still unclear why companies and leaders are still afraid in our industry to use the word psychological safety without having it feel like it's a pejorative.
Well, I think it's come a long way in the last 2 or 3 years. So kudos for that. Are we there? No. but it has come a very long way. There've been a lot of nationally. I mean, I've been 94 places, and other people are doing things. So I mean, there's a lot of recognition now, and I kind of called that like phase one maybe, and now there's a phase two, and people like Brandon Anderson with Associated General Contractors out of Missouri. He's really talking about, okay, time to stop talking and time to take action. And the Associated General Contractors have, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they've just received a $7 million grant from the Bechtel Construction Organization with a 5-year program for some tools on this. The Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention doing a lot. So there is more getting done. Why don't leaders want to do it? Well, the first reason, it's uncomfortable. What's it going to cost me? What's the liability? Am I going to get into some liability concerns here if I don't notice someone or don't catch something? I mean, if I let somebody work and I know their back's injured and now suddenly they become somehow disabled, can I get sued for that? Well, God, if I can get sued for that, how am I going to look at somebody's brain and tell if they get disabled? Am I going to be sued for that? How can I ever watch that? I just think there's a lot of unfounded fears. Well, I'll be blunt. There's a lot of unfounded excuses. That may not make everyone happy, but that's what I think they are, excuses. Because again, I somebody can maybe convince me otherwise, but I'm telling you, I think earlier you said 4 million and 3 million, but between talks and everything I've done in TEDx, it's over. It may be 4 million. I don't know. I know it's over 3 million. I've had one person say something negative. And that was a professor out of the state of Oklahoma that said, this has no business being in the workplace. This is a personal issue.
Wow.
Now I could sit here if you've got 5 hours and I can go name by name and read names to you of people that have said thank you, that, hey, great. I mean, go pull up the TEDx talks and look at all the comments in there. Thank you for doing this. We've needed this. So why don't we do it? So just do it, as Nike would say, I guess.
I love that. So how did you address the uncomfortableness of the conversation, the cost and the potential liability within Ajax to either to get your team on board, to get the staff from the field to the office to your boss? How did you address those concerns to get everybody on board where they were no longer concerned about the liability, cost, and discomfort?
Well, let me begin by saying 100% of the people aren't on board, and 100% of the people will never be on board. But I would say that more than 90% are. But you're never going to have everyone on board. We have a lot of cowboys here in Florida that think differently. The owner of our company was receptive to it because of my personal story. And we're in an insurance captive, and the insurance captive had already begun to discuss the mental health piece a little bit, how they needed to get that into the insurance captive more to help lower our claims and our injuries. And I don't know, maybe I'm blessed as a leader. I mean, there's another guy that I admire greatly, Dan Garcia. He leads C.W. Matthews out of Atlanta. And Dan is even better at this than I am. He knows they have over 1,000 employees, and I'm telling you, he knows 1,000 of their names because he goes and visits with them. He sees them. He's blessed to be bilingual. He talks to them in Spanish. He talks to them in English. He asks them how they're doing. They reward their employees. They have equipment rodeos for their employees where they have fun days and can win plaques and trophies and awards. And again, it just goes, it's all about your culture and being accessible. I mean, there's not anybody in the company that can't walk into my office and sit down today. I mean, there's two chairs behind this camera here that you can't see. And probably 3 years ago, one of those chairs sat a man that was talking about taking his life, and the other chair sat a man that was his supervisor, that also a part-time pastor. And the three of us sat in here and cried together and talked about why there was a God or why there wasn't a God. And I mean, the conversation got in depth, and he had been struggling with taking his life on and off for a while. And the last time I checked on him, because he left here, he went somewhere else, which is okay. I asked Albert, how's he doing? And he said he's doing great. He just had to get through where he was at. And you taking time and the leader of the company to actually listen to him and care about him, he said, you'll never know what that meant to him. I mean, I think I ended up buying, I said, what can we do to help you with your mind? And I think what we agreed upon, I ended up buying him a bicycle because he wanted to go bicycle riding in the evenings when he got home to relax.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What a neat, when you speak about, it's all about culture, and you've repeated that several times. And I think caring about human beings, that your boss and the leader of Ajax, like that was fundamental from the beginning, and just finding new ways to care about your staff. How much of your growth, so to go from 450 staff, I think, or 400 and some staff to 650 in the last 3 years, how much of that growth do you attribute to your culture?
Being able to get the employees was attributed to our culture. I mean, part of the growth was we got into more trucking that we didn't customarily do, but we went from 78 people to 600 people over 23 years. And part of that growth was in 2012, we bought another company that approached us. It was a family business that the dad was retiring, and he asked us if we would buy his plant and his equipment, and we did. And we also took on 150, 200 of his employees, I think. And that was up in our Tampa division. And that may have been the 3 toughest years in that division, because the company we acquired had a totally different culture than ours. And we ended up losing a lot of those people, but we also retained a lot of those people. Some of the people that we lost were the ones that came from upper management of the other companies, because they had this different vision of how the workers could be trusted and treated than we did. But a lot of those workers from the other company, they came here and learned that how we treated them and trusted them. 13 years later, a big majority of those people are still here.
What do you say, like from a position of empathy, what do you say to leaders and managers who still have a more, let's say, old school mentality when it comes to how we treat people, like more of a stick, treating construction workers like they're replaceable, right? That, like, what do you tell them, or how do you
Hey, they
start
are
that conversation?
replaceable. How much money you want to spend training? How much money do you want to spend recruiting? So, hey, I'm replaceable. You're replaceable. We're all replaceable. So, hey, if that's your mentality, and if you're happy constantly recruiting, if you're constantly happy training, if that's you, I also got to believe you're probably paying a high insurance premium, because you probably don't have a great safety record or a great safety culture. So, hey, if that's how you want to run your business, kudos to you if it's working for you. How do you want to be treated when you go home? How do you want to be treated when you go to dinner with a friend? Do you want to be ridiculed? Do you want to be cursed at? Do you want to walk in the house and and have your wife cussing at you because you didn't mow the grass or you didn't do whatever? Or do you want to walk into the house and have your wife say, honey, God, it's great to see you come home. I'm glad you made it home safe today. Give me a hug. I mean, which home would you rather walk into? So if you're an employee, which company would you rather walk into? I'm going to tell you, and I was going to say in Florida, but I'm going to say what I've learned nationally in the US. We have a lot, I think we have more companies doing it right, how they treat their employees, than we have doing it wrong. I don't think, I know we do. And I've seen a lot of them. So if you're one of those companies that's not doing it right, they're probably, hey, unless you're in some remote part of Canada or some remote part of the US, they're probably somewhere close nearby where they can go and get a different job if you're not treating them right. The first on stage talk I really did about the topic was at the Florida Asphalt Expo in Orlando, Florida. And I think it would have been in December of 22, I think. And I've got a lot of friendly competitors here in the asphalt industry. I serve on boards with them, and we have a great relationship. And we also kind of have had an agreement that, I'm not going to hire your people, you don't hire my people. And I'm not going to recruit your people, you don't recruit my people. I mean, I have such a good relationship with one of the companies. I'll call them and say, hey, you got this guy over here, and he's looking for a job, and I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I want you to have a chance to keep him if you can, or do you want me to hire him? And we decide what to do. But I stood on the stage that day, and a lot of those competitors were in the room. And I gave my talk sharing these numbers, and I gave the talk sharing my story of my attempt in my life. And I finished the talk by telling them, I said, I have always had an agreement with you guys. I'm not going to hire your people if you don't hire my people. And I said, well, today that agreement ends. I said, because I'm tired of your people coming to my organization telling me we want to work for you because of how we hear you take care of your people. So I'm telling you, I'm going to start hiring your people, but I'm also challenging you that if you don't want me to hire your people, address your culture. And the people that were in the room that day, one of those companies, I started this national, well, it was a Florida walk here in Florida. I started it with the help of several other contractors. And it's going national this year. And it's going national in part because one of the companies that was in that room is part of a national organization. And he went back and told the people, not only are we going to do this in Florida, we're going to do it everywhere in the U.S. where we have a company. We're going to participate in this walk. We're going to get involved. Another company in the room that day had me come to Orlando, Florida, and speak to their employees at one of their safety events. Another person in that room that day had me come to Jacksonville and speak to their people. So all those people took the challenge, and they're all doing things. The company in Jacksonville, they have created a mental health team like we had here at Ajax now. So yeah, I think there are more companies going at this right than there are wrong. Now the question is, within those companies, are the boots on the ground, are the mid-level people, are they as excited about it as the HR and the leaders of the company about it? So by that I mean, are the leaders engaging with that mid-level, the foreman and superintendent type people, and keeping the conversation going on? It's important to let them know the why. Why are we doing this? And there's a lot of whys, both professionally and personal, why you would want to do this for people.
For the Ajax Warriors, what is their why?
I'm terrible with mission and vision statements, so I don't remember that because I can't even remember our company one. Their why is because they want to take care of their coworkers, and it's somewhere along those lines in that statement. It's about supporting the people around them. It's about making the operation that much safer. It's about the human.
It's a great why, and it's simple. Do you like for the Ajax Warriors? Is the mission vision statement, like the structure, is that publicly available? Is that something you keep private, or do you share it openly?
No, this company in Jacksonville took it. Their mission statement is be committed to communicating that our employees' mental health and wellness are paramount and part of our plan to be an employer, contractor, and partner of choice. We have an A-team card, and if you go to the A-team card, we say that we want to be the employer, partner, and contractor of choice. We want to be the employer that people want to work for, the contractor that people want to use, and the partner that other construction organizations want to work with. So the Warrior statement says in order for us to be those three things, we have to have a mental health initiative. And their commitments, Ajax will have me trained biannually as a mental health first aid ambassador. I'll work to promote mental health awareness and reduce stigmatization. I'll participate in a minimum of two suicide walks annually. I'm on this committee out of compassion and care, not looking for financial gain. I will promote that it is okay to say that you're not okay.
That's beautiful, because it hits all the points, and it builds in some accountability as well as some empathy and some structure. And provides a really phenomenal direction.
Yeah.
Man, I really appreciate your time. You've been extremely generous with your time and your sharing. As we kind of come to a close, is there anything else you kind of want to kind of address? But I think this is tremendously valuable, especially for people who are running businesses and want to make a shift in a more intentional manner.
Don't start tomorrow what you can start today.
Do it now. Now is a great time.
Yeah. Hey, and I tell people I have a website.
Yeah.
I'm not selling anything. If people, it's www.vincehafeli.com. So just vincehafeli.com. And there's a way on there you can reach out, and I respond to 100% of the people that do. If there's any more questions or anything I can do to help or anything I can share with you, I will.
That's awesome, Vince. I really appreciate that. And I think that's another thing for the viewers. I saw on your website that you're available for guest speaking, right? And like for a reasonable fee is what it looked like. And I think the more, like, especially with your experience in unrolling is at a big company, right? In a hardworking industry that paving is, that type of leadership and experience is invaluable. And I would say that if you can implement these changes in structure at an asphalt company, right? That like of 600 plus employees, with that family feel and care for your staff, it can be implemented anywhere.
It can, and there's a lot of large companies with thousands of employees that are doing it.
Awesome. Well, what a great message. Thank you very much, Vince, for joining me today. And I hope everybody's enjoyed this PeopleBuild podcast today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.